My parents said Grandma sent me $200 for my graduation, but she asked about the $18,000 later. Please stay with me as I tell you my story. Graduation day should have felt like freedom, but all I remember is sitting on the porch, watching everyone laugh around the barbecue while I pretended the envelope in my lap meant something. Mom handed it to me that morning with her usual smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. From Grandma, she said, the way people say bless you after a sneeze, automatic, emotionless. Inside were 2 crisp $100 bills. I stared at them too long, trying to imagine the dress patterns I could buy, the fabric rolls I could start with, the website I could maybe build. 200 wouldn't go far, but it was something. Don't look disappointed, Mom said, half joking. It's the thought that counts. Riley laughed from across the room, twirling her new iPhone in her perfectly manicured hands. Grandma probably didn't want to play favorites, she said, smirking. She just opened a set of luxury headphones and a designer purse from our parents. Dad winked at her like she was the favorite prize in a raffle. I tried not to notice, the way I'd been trying not to notice my whole life. I smiled anyway. Tell Grandma thank you, I said. I really appreciate it. The truth was I did. $200 could still buy fabric, or at least thread and hope. I'd been sketching designs between night shifts at the little fabric shop downtown, imagining my own name stitched onto a clothing tag. That envelope, small and thin as it was, felt like permission to keep trying. Later that night, after the guests left, I sat on my bed scrolling through my bank app. $200. I thought about sending Grandma a thank you card, but Mom said, "Don't bother, I already told her you got it." Her voice was clipped, impatient. She was cleaning up champagne glasses that Riley had left out, muttering about how no one helps around here. It didn't make sense, but I brushed it off. Everything in our house worked like that. Things that didn't make sense were meant to be ignored. Riley burst into my room holding her new purse like a trophy. "You know, Mom and Dad really went all out this year," she said. "Guess hard work pays off." She meant her GPA, but all I could think about was the envelope, still lying on my desk, thin and lonely. I remember lying awake that night, staring at the ceiling fan and wondering if Grandma would ever visit again. She always said she couldn't wait to see me build something beautiful. I didn't know what she meant then. I just assumed she was talking about dresses. But later, when she showed up and asked about the 18,000, I realized she'd met my life. Growing up, I learned to stay quiet. Riley was the loud one, the funny one, the one who always got what she wanted. When she wanted a new phone, Dad said yes before she finished asking. When I mentioned needing a new sewing machine, Mom said, "We'll see," which always meant no. I wasn't angry back then, just used to it. It was easier to disappear than to compete. The tension at home started to feel heavier, though no one said what was wrong. Mom came back one evening wearing a diamond necklace that caught the light from every corner of the room. When I asked where it came from, she smiled in that tight way she always did and said, "Just a little treat for myself." A few days later, Dad showed off a new smartwatch, saying it was a great deal. Riley flaunted a designer handbag she claimed she bought with her own savings. None of it made sense. Our family wasn't poor, but we were never the type to buy expensive things just because. I tried to be polite and not question too much. Still, every time I looked around the house, I noticed something new, a fancy coffee maker, fresh decorations, expensive shoes. Mom would joke, "We deserve nice things once in a while." But once in a while became all the time. When I tried to ask how we could afford all this, Dad's tone changed. "It's family money, Clara. Don't worry about it." That phrase, family money, stuck in my mind like a splinter. At work, I told Sheila about it while we restocked fabric bolts. She frowned. "Family money? That's a weird answer," she said. "You should ask them again." I shrugged, pretending not to care, but the truth was I did. I didn't want to believe anything bad about my parents, yet things weren't adding up. Over the next few weeks, I noticed how my parents avoided eye contact whenever money came up. They used to talk openly about bills or groceries, but now conversations stopped when I entered the room. I'd catch half sentences, "She'll find out," or "Just keep it quiet," followed by silence. When I asked what they were talking about, Mom would say, "Nothing for you to worry about, honey." Her voice sounded sweet, but it carried something sharp beneath it. Riley, as usual, stayed out of it. She was busy showing off her new things online, posting pictures of herself at restaurants I couldn't afford. When I mentioned it, she laughed. "Don't be jealous, Clara. You'll get your turn." Her words made me feel small, like I wasn't part of the same family. One night, after everyone went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table and looked around. The diamond necklace was hanging on a chair, the watch was charging on the counter, the handbag on the sofa. All of it glittered in the dim light, proof that something was off. My chest felt tight. I thought about Grandma and how she always asked if I was saving up for my designs. I wondered if I should tell her how weird things had become, but I didn't want to make her worry. The next day, Sheila brought it up again. "You can't keep pretending it's fine," she said. "If something feels wrong, it probably is." I nodded but stayed quiet. I wanted to believe my parents wouldn't lie, that family money really meant something harmless. Still, every new item in the house made that harder to believe. I started to dread going home. The silence, the whispers, the sudden gifts, it all felt like clues to a puzzle I wasn't ready to solve. Something was being hidden, and deep down, I knew it had everything to do with me. When Grandma called to say she was coming to visit, my heart jumped. It had been months since I last saw her, and even through the phone, her voice carried comfort. She said she wanted to see how I was doing after graduation and check on her girls. Mom smiled tightly when she hung up. "We'll have to make the house look nice," she said. From that moment, everything turned into a performance. Dad started cleaning like the president was coming over. He washed the car, mowed the lawn twice, even polished the picture frames. Mom filled the kitchen with the smell of roasted chicken and buttered rolls, fussing over every dish. Riley acted like she'd suddenly become the perfect daughter, offering to help in the kitchen, complimenting Mom's dress, speaking softly instead of her usual sharp tone. I watched them all pretending we were one big happy family, and part of me wondered who they thought they were fooling. I didn't say much. I helped set the table, made sure Grandma's favorite chair was clean, and tried not to think about the tension that had been hanging in the air lately. Deep down, I hoped her visit would make things feel normal again. She had a way of making everything calmer, brighter, real. When the doorbell rang, Mom rushed to answer like she was meeting a celebrity. Grandma stepped in wearing her pale blue coat and a big smile that reached her eyes. The whole room seemed lighter. She hugged everyone, saving me for last. Her arms wrapped around me tightly, and for the first time in weeks, I felt safe. "My designer girl," she said. "I've missed you." Dinner started cheerful enough. Grandma asked about everyone's lives, and of course, Riley took over the conversation, talking about her social plans, her job search, her busy schedule. Mom nodded proudly at every word. Dad poured more drinks, his smile too wide. I stayed quiet, mostly listening. Grandma turned to me after a while. "And how's your fashion line coming along, sweetheart?" I hesitated. "I'm still saving," I said softly. "Trying to get the right equipment." Grandma's brow furrowed slightly. "Oh," she said. "I thought you'd already started." Mom froze. Dad coughed. Riley looked down at her plate. Grandma continued, still smiling. "I mean, with the 18,000 I sent for you, I thought you'd be off designing by now." Everything stopped. The only sound was the hum of the fridge. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. 18,000? My mind went blank. Mom's face turned pale. "What money?" she said, forcing a laugh. Grandma blinked, confused. "The money I sent over the past year, for Clara's business. I sent it through your account, Linda." Dad suddenly found something interesting on his plate. Riley pushed food around with her fork. I sat frozen, trying to understand what I just heard. My voice came out barely above a whisper. I only got 200. Grandma's smile faded. Her eyes darted between my parents. "What do you mean, only 200? No one answered. Mom stuttered something about confusion, but the words didn't make sense. The air felt heavy, like the room itself had stopped breathing. I looked at Grandma, her face tightening as realization hit. Her hand trembled slightly. I wanted to say something, to stop her from seeing what I was seeing, but it was too late. The rest of the dinner passed in silence. Plates went untouched. I couldn't taste the food or even move. All I could think about was that number echoing in my head. $18,000. Money meant for me. And suddenly, I understood why everything in this house had looked new lately. No one spoke for a few seconds after Grandma mentioned the 18,000. The silence was thick and painful. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Grandma looked around the table, waiting for someone to explain, but no one did. Finally, I took a breath and said, "Grandma, I only got $200. That's all they gave me." Her eyes widened. 200? She repeated slowly, as if she couldn't believe she'd heard me right. "That can't be right, Clara. I sent the rest months ago." Mom tried to smile, but it came out shaky. "You must be mistaken, Mom," she said softly. "There must have been some kind of mix-up at the bank." Grandma's voice hardened. "A mix-up?" $18,000 vanished into thin air. Her tone filled the room like thunder. Dad cleared his throat and looked anywhere but at her. Riley suddenly found her nails very interesting. "Where's the money, Linda?" Grandma asked. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried power. That money was for Clara, her business, her dream. Dad finally spoke. "It's complicated," he muttered. "We were struggling and—" "Struggling?" Grandma cut him off. "I saw the new watch on your wrist, Mark. I saw the necklace your wife is wearing." Mom's face turned red. "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "We only borrowed it for a while. We were going to pay it back once things settled." I stared at her, trying to understand. "You borrowed my future?" My voice trembled. "All this time you told me there wasn't any money. You let me think Grandma barely sent anything." Riley spoke up next, her tone defensive. "You're being dramatic. Mom and Dad just needed help. You live at home rent-free, Clara. Be thankful for that." Grandma turned sharply toward her. "Enough, Riley. You don't talk about being thankful when you've been living off money that wasn't yours." Riley's mouth snapped shut. The truth started to come out in broken pieces. Mom admitted they used part of the money to pay off credit cards. Dad confessed that the rest went to family expenses, which, when Grandma pressed him, turned out to be vacations, shopping, and Riley's needs. Each word felt like a slap. I remembered every time they told me to wait, to settle, to stop dreaming so big. I remembered nights I stayed up sketching, thinking I just needed to work harder, when they'd already taken what was meant to help me. Grandma pushed her chair back and stood up. "You stole from your own daughter," she said quietly. Her hands were shaking now, not from weakness but anger. "All those times you smiled at me and said Clara was doing fine, you were lying to my face." Dad tried to stand too, but she held up her hand. "Don't," she said. "You've said enough." No one looked at me. The air felt thick, my chest heavy. I couldn't cry, couldn't move. I just sat there, hearing every excuse and realizing how deep the betrayal ran. Mom whispered that they only wanted what's best for the family. That word, family, made me sick. Grandma looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, sweetheart," she said. "I trusted them to do right by you." I shook my head, unable to speak. Everything I believed about my parents felt broken. The dinner table that once held laughter now felt like a crime scene. And I was sitting in the middle of it, staring at the people who'd stolen not just money, but years of my hope. After everyone left the table, Grandma stood quietly for a moment. No one dared to speak. Then she turned to me and said, "Clara, come outside with me." Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of something deeper, disappointment, sadness, maybe both. I followed her out to the porch. The air was cool, and the sound of crickets filled the silence that had replaced dinner. For a while, she said nothing. She just looked out at the yard, her hands clasped tightly together. Then she sighed and spoke softly. "I should have been paying more attention," she said. "I trusted them to do right by you." I didn't know what to say. I stared at my shoes and whispered, "I didn't know about any of it. I thought you only sent a little." She turned to me, shaking her head. "No, Clara. I've been sending money for years. Sometimes a few hundred, sometimes more. I wanted you to have a safety net. I thought your parents were putting it away for your future." Her voice broke slightly. All this time, they kept taking it. Her words hit hard. The pieces started to fit together, the new things at home, the excuses, the guilt in their eyes. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I asked quietly. "I didn't want to make things complicated," she said. "I thought they'd be proud to help you." "I was wrong." She paused, looking out into the dark yard again. "I can't undo what they did, but I can help you now." I glanced at her, confused. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly, though her eyes still looked tired. "I own a small design studio in St. Louis. It's nothing fancy, but it's honest work. I could use someone creative, someone who understands fabric and design like you do." My heart jumped. "You're serious?" "Of course I am," she said. "And I also have a little apartment in Springfield. It's been empty for a while. You could stay there until you figure out what you want next." The words felt unreal. For a moment, I could picture it. Working at her studio, building something real, being surrounded by people who didn't make me feel small. But then I thought about my parents. About all the years I tried to earn their approval. "If I leave," I said slowly, "they'll hate me." Grandma looked straight at me. "You don't owe them your dreams," she said. "They made their choice when they used what was meant for you. Now it's your turn to choose yourself. I looked back at the house through the window. Mom was still at the table, her face buried in her hands. Dad sat stiffly beside her, not moving. Riley had disappeared to her room. For the first time, I saw them differently, not as my protectors, but as people who'd made selfish decisions and expected me to live quietly beneath them. I don't know if I can just walk away, I said. Grandma reached for my hand. You don't have to decide tonight. But don't let their mistakes hold you down any longer. You deserve a life that's yours. The night air felt heavy around us, but not cold. I took a deep breath and nodded slowly. Somewhere deep inside, I already knew what I wanted. Still, saying it out loud felt impossible. Grandma gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Whatever you decide, I'll be here, she said. Then she stood, her posture strong, her expression steady. It's time they face what they've done. And it's time you start living. As she walked back inside, I stayed on the porch, staring at the quiet street ahead, wondering if freedom could really be waiting on the other side of this night. The days after that night felt slow and tense. No one talked much, but the silence was louder than any argument. I could feel eyes on me at all times, like everyone was waiting to see what I would do. Grandma had gone back to her hotel, saying she'd give us some space. But her words stayed in my mind. You don't owe them your dreams. Mom started acting overly kind, cooking breakfast and leaving notes on my door that said things like, "We love you, sweetheart." Dad offered to drive me to work and asked about my designs as if he suddenly cared. Their voices sounded softer than before, but it didn't feel real. It felt like they were trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. One evening, Mom came into my room holding a cup of tea. You don't have to leave, she said quietly. We made mistakes, but we're still family. Her eyes looked tired, but there was guilt behind them too. We'll make it right, she added, though she didn't say how. I nodded but stayed silent. I didn't know what to believe anymore. Dad followed later that night and said, We only wanted to help everyone. We didn't mean to hurt you. I wanted to ask how stealing from me was supposed to help anyone, but the words wouldn't come out. Riley avoided me for 2 days, then finally knocked on my door. She stood there twisting her bracelet. I didn't know, Clara. I swear, she said. I thought Grandma gave you the money directly. I stared at her for a moment. Maybe she really didn't know, but she had still lived off the things bought with it. It doesn't matter now, I said softly. It's done. At work, Sheila noticed how quiet I'd become. During our lunch break, she asked what was going on. When I told her everything, she shook her head in disbelief. They've used you enough, Clara, she said firmly. If you have a way out, take it. Don't stay just because you feel guilty. Her words hit me hard. I realized that guilt was the only thing keeping me there. The guilt of leaving, of choosing myself over the people who raised me. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the ceiling. The house felt smaller than ever. Every wall held a memory, but now they all felt tainted. By the third night, I made my decision. I called Grandma and told her I was ready. She didn't sound surprised, just relieved. Good, she said softly. It's time, sweetheart. I'll come help you pack. When she arrived the next morning, she didn't say much. She just hugged me, then started folding my clothes neatly into a suitcase. You've carried their weight long enough, she said. Now carry your own future. I moved quietly, gathering my things, my sketchbook, my sewing kit, my notebooks full of ideas. Each item reminded me of who I wanted to be. As I zipped up the suitcase, something inside me shifted. The anger and sadness didn't disappear, but they stopped controlling me. Grandma looked at me and smiled with pride. That's my girl, she said. You're doing the right thing. I nodded, holding back tears. The choice wasn't easy, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of freedom. I wasn't the invisible daughter anymore. I was someone taking her first real step forward. As I looked around my room one last time, I realized this wasn't just me leaving home. It was me finally walking toward the life I'd been dreaming of. The morning I decided to leave, the house was quiet. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway and the faint hum of the refrigerator. My suitcase sat by the door, packed and ready. Grandma waited outside in her car, giving me space to say goodbye. I took one long breath before walking into the living room. Mom and Dad were already there. Mom's eyes were red from crying, and Dad looked older than I had ever seen him. Riley stood near the window, holding her phone but not really using it. The air was heavy, as if the walls themselves knew what was about to happen. Mom spoke first. Clara, please don't go, she said, her voice shaking. We can fix this. We're still a family. I looked at her but said nothing for a moment. I could see the fear in her eyes, not just fear of losing me, but fear of facing what they'd done. Dad stepped forward and said, "Your mom's right. Let's start fresh. We'll make it right this time." I shook my head. "You already had your chance," I said quietly. "You took the money Grandma sent for me. You knew what it was for." Riley turned toward me, her face pale. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen," she said softly. I swear I didn't know. I looked at her, searching for sincerity. Maybe she didn't know everything, but she'd seen the benefits. She had lived off what wasn't hers. "It doesn't matter anymore," I said. "What's done is done." Mom reached out to touch my arm, but I stepped back. "Clara, please," she whispered. "Don't walk away like this. You're our daughter." Her words made my chest tighten, but I stayed firm. "A family doesn't take from each other," I said. My voice stayed calm, though my hands trembled. "You didn't just take money. You took trust. You took years I could have used to build something of my own." Dad tried again, his tone more desperate now. "We didn't mean to hurt you. We thought we'd pay it back when we could. You have to understand." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You chose yourselves every time. You told me to be grateful while using what was meant for my future." No one spoke after that. Mom covered her face, crying quietly. Riley stared at the floor. Dad sank into a chair, his shoulders slumped, his confidence gone. I looked at each of them one last time. "I can't stay here anymore," I said simply. "I need to move forward." Mom started to say something, but I turned toward the door before she could finish. My suitcase wheels clicked softly against the floor. Each step felt heavier and lighter at the same time. When I stepped outside, the cold air hit my face. Grandma was waiting with the car door open. She gave me a small nod as if to say, "It's done." I didn't look back until I reached the sidewalk. Through the window, I saw them sitting in silence. The house that once felt too small now looked empty. Grandma didn't speak as we drove away. She didn't need to. I could see in her eyes that she was proud of me, even if my heart ached. Later, I learned she had stopped sending them money completely. Without her support, my parents had to face their own bills, their own choices. For the first time, they couldn't rely on anyone else to clean up their mess. As for me, I didn't feel anger anymore. Just relief. I wasn't running away. I was walking towards something better. The family I thought I needed was gone, but what I had now was my freedom, and that was finally enough. Moving into Grandma's apartment felt like stepping into a new world. The space was small but bright, with sunlight pouring through the wide windows and the faint scent of lavender from the curtains. I unpacked slowly, hanging my sketches on the wall and setting my sewing machine on the desk by the window. It was the first time I had a space that was completely mine. No voices shouting in the background, no tension waiting around every corner. Just peace. Grandma showed me around the design studio the next morning. It was tucked away on a quiet street in St. Louis, filled with color and texture, racks of fabric, rolls of thread, and patterns pinned on boards. The hum of sewing machines and soft chatter of workers filled the air. "This is where ideas come alive," Grandma said, smiling. "Now it's your turn." She gave me a small desk in the corner and told me to start wherever I felt inspired. I ran my fingers across the fabric rolls, feeling the texture of each one, smooth silk, rough denim, soft cotton. For the first time, I didn't feel invisible. Everyone there treated me like an equal. They asked about my designs, gave advice, and encouraged me to try new things. Each day began early and ended late, but it didn't feel like work. I loved the rhythm, the snip of scissors, the hum of machines, the smell of new fabric. Slowly, I began to build my own collection. It wasn't big or fancy, but it was mine. I designed a few dresses and jackets, each with something personal in the stitching. Grandma helped me with the details, teaching me how to finish seams and handle customers. One evening, I showed her my first completed piece, a simple linen dress with embroidered cuffs. She looked at it for a long time before saying, "You did this all on your own. I'm proud of you, Clara." Her words filled the quiet room like sunlight. Orders started to come in one by one. A local boutique asked to feature my work. A few online buyers found me through social media. The progress was slow but steady. I didn't care about money or success. Just the fact that someone wanted something I created was enough. Sheila called often, cheering me on. "See, I told you this was your moment," she said during one late-night call. I laughed, thanking her for believing in me when things looked dark. Even from miles away, she reminded me where I came from and how far I'd come. As weeks passed, Grandma and I grew even closer. We shared meals, stories, and quiet evenings over tea. Sometimes she'd tell me about her early years, how she once struggled to start her own shop with barely any money. "You remind me of myself," she'd say, "but stronger." I didn't think about my parents much anymore. The anger had faded into something quieter, not forgiveness, but peace. I didn't need revenge or apologies to feel whole. I had my work, my independence, and someone who truly cared about me. That was more than enough. Late one night, as I sat by the window sketching new designs, I realized how far I had come. The girl who once felt small and unseen had built something real from nothing. The noise and pain of the past had been replaced by the steady sound of creation, fabric, thread, and dreams coming together in my hands. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was becoming who I was meant to be. Months passed quietly, each day bringing a little more peace. The small studio in St. Louis was now busy with work. My designs were selling well, and people had started recognizing my name. I wasn't famous, but I was doing something I loved, and that was enough. The world that once felt small had finally opened up for me. One afternoon, Sheila called and mentioned she'd heard from someone back in Springfield. My parents were struggling. The house was listed for sale, and the cars were gone. Bills had piled up, and the credit cards were maxed out. Riley had moved back home after losing her job. For a moment, I didn't know how to feel. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. A small part of me felt sad that it ended this way, but I knew it was their own doing. They had built their comfort on lies, and now the truth had caught up with them. I didn't tell Grandma right away. She had already done enough to help me heal, and I didn't want to reopen old wounds. But that night, while sewing a new piece, I thought about everything. The girl who once believed she didn't matter, the one who stayed quiet, hoping to be noticed. That girl was gone. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was finally standing on my own. A week later, Grandma handed me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter in her neat, careful script. It read, "Clara, I'm proud of the woman you've become. You didn't let them steal your light. You took pain and turned it into strength. Never forget what you're capable of." I read the words twice, feeling warmth spread through my chest. For the first time in a long while, I truly believed them. That evening, I sat by my window as the city lights flickered below. My sketchbook lay open beside me, filled with new designs, fresh colors, bold lines, and a signature that finally felt like mine. I closed it gently, turning off the lamp. As I stood up, I whispered to myself, "No one can take your dreams, not even the people who raised you." Then I smiled, not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood what freedom really meant. My story wasn't about what I lost anymore. It was about what I had built from the pieces. Do you think I made the right choice by walking away from my family, or should I have given them another chance after everything they did? I still wonder sometimes if leaving was the only way to find peace. Tell me what you think in the comments. I'd really love to hear your thoughts. And if you want to hear more stories like mine, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what comes next.